Welcome back, Chelsea fans, to another episode of the London's Blue Podcast live, coming to you right after full time. Chelsea beating Forest on the away ground. Oh, what a day. What a season. Job's not done completely yet because we do have a cup final coming up in the midweek, but Chelsea are back in the Champions League next season. It just unlocks so much. It even unlocks a special end of Premier League season appearance from one Brandon Busby to join us for the first part of this live stream too, which I think just makes it all that much sweeter, Brandon.
I'm happy to fill in. Obviously, the results are what matters, not me hanging out, but it seemed like too good of a moment to miss. So I don't know how much we had to pay to get everything to go our way today, but we'll take it and we'll run and we will bask in the glory of not just sneaking into Champions League, Dan, but firmly establish ourselves in fourth place.
A confident finish to the end of the season, a great set of runs, a great set of results from the players, the way that they committed to it. I mean, some great performances from one Reece James for the last couple of matches too. I think Sam, as we kind of get into this, it was a long season. We've done so many previews together. We know how long this season was. How are you feeling just knowing that fourth is confirmed, Champions League is back, and we're ready to go again?
Absolutely tremendous. I mean, this was the bare minimum for me. I've even said that probably for me a bigger win than the Conference League final. Just to be able to get the sponsorship money, just to be able to go there, lure the best players in, make sure that we have upgrades lined up. I genuinely think this is a massive performance, and didn't need any favors from anybody else, which is always what you want. You want to go ahead and do the job for yourself. So supremely well done, and very proud of the guys, and looking forward to some really good Champions League games next season.
I mean, Captain of Positivity Nick Verlaney joins the stream here, busting out what looks like, if you're watching on YouTube, a wonderful pour of something brown and delicious, bourbon of some sort, I'm guessing, Nick?
Yeah, I ended up going with the Jefferson's Ocean because it's a celebratory bourbon, and we are celebrating today. So I am very, very excited about that. Huge, very professional second half. Took care of business. Didn't give Forrest really anything to sniff at. Obviously, the results elsewhere help, but we've been saying for the last 3 weeks, it's all about us. It's all about the way that we close this season. And two really, really gutsy, not that pretty, defensive, solid victories to close it out. That's some Chelsea of old stuff right there. So very excited about that performance.
When you think about it, we had 4 wins and 1 loss across those last final fixtures. The only loss coming to Newcastle, which I guess in that regard, we did help them, finish in a higher position over Aston Villa here in that regard from a goal difference perspective. They did finish level on points with Aston Villa. Aston Villa doing themselves no favors on the day with the Emi Martinez red card. That was effectively a football tackle, American football, not actually world football in that regard. I guess maybe just to start, because we can get into a lot of things here. We're doing this one live on YouTube. So if you got comments or questions, throw them in the chat, please. But Brandon, maybe just in terms of now heading into the end of the season with where we're going in the summer, the final, what do you think has changed now for the club and the direction, given the fact that Champions League football is back on, potentially something like Jordan kits are going to be coming, potentially something like a premier top level sponsor for front of kit. I mean, there's so many things that we're hinging on a great performance here, and Enzo Maresca and the team get it done.
Well, you are back in the premier competition in European football, which means you unlock access to things that I think we haven't had in the last few seasons in terms of top tier talent, top tier sponsors, and those are the big things. Also, think about all of the financial hoops that the club has been jumping through in the last couple of seasons to make all these different, financial regulations work. Well, guess what, Dan? Champions League brings even more, right? They have their own
money?
Sets. Well, more money, but more regulations as well. So hopefully we didn't mortgage too much of the farm to get through the Premier League regulations, because now we have to go here. But just putting it in monetary terms, this could easily be upwards of 80 to 110 million conservatively in terms of new sponsors, the match day revenue, the increased broadcast media that you get from the Champions League. So it's significant. It's usually significant. There's I think no other way really than winning the championship playoff than qualifying for the Champions League in terms of a 9-figure swing financially from season to season. So it's huge.
Oh, look, we got some money ball from Brandon Buzz when he comes back on the podcast. Very, very good. Sam, from a footballing perspective, maybe just within this game, what did you like in terms of what Enzo Maresca was able to put together to go against a Forest side that had looked for the majority of the season to be well within control, overperformed, but those last 5 fixtures, again, now with our watch, 2 losses, 2 draws, and a win. Obviously, an owner just absolutely giving it to his manager on the pitch, which is a very unique way of motivating people. Don't think I would try that way, but it does feel as if, we really set up well in this game to do exactly what we needed to make sure that Forest played into our hands.
2 things. I think one we discussed on the preview board in terms of could there be certain changes that you could implement to make sure that you could blunt Forest's threat? And both of us talked about maybe the possibility of giving Tosin a little bit of game time in the United game, getting him to come in, use his elevation, use his height to get on Chris Wood. 4 out of 3 aerial duels. So, 3 out of 4. My math is really bad. 3 out of 4 aerial duels, 1 against Wood. Colville 3 on 3. Wood 0 on 3 on the day. So when you have somebody who scored 8 goals from headers in the Premier League and you keep him quiet like that, obviously he missed those 2 big chances. Great glove from Robert Sanchez to take the ball away from him at the last moment, but just to keep him aerially quiet, keep his link up to bare minimum was a very good decision in my opinion from Maresca. And we also talked about on this review pod like multiple times players having to step up, and Levi Colville in my opinion is the guy who stepped up. He just said, I will show you what a Cobham leader graduate looks like. Has been absolutely phenomenal in the last 3-4 games. He has basically shown everything that you want from your central defender, and he's just radiated the kind of world-class potential that we all knew he had somewhere, but was sort of in the frantic race for top 5. Probably not been that consistent, but in these past few games, very, very encouraging for the future. So both from manager and the squad, great job.
Come on, Nick. Just keep on piling on the Levi Colwell love. I know we've been talking about it the last couple games, the way he stepped up, the way he's really, I think, made a true kind of jump forward in his progression and the comfort we have about him being a part of the squad, being a part of that back line, not only now, but in next season. Another great performance in this match.
Levi Gronkier.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, that is for real. A toast to Levi, a player who needed to step up. I think did step up. Obviously, the goal was huge, but I think you look at some of the physically demanding players that he's come up against over the last, I would even stretch it back like 8 or 9 weeks. He's dealt with it incredibly well after some early wobbles this season, and I think the goal today was fantastic, and obviously is the thing that catapults us into 4th instead of 5th, and made it a lot more tenable for my nerves at the end of the game. But the defensive performances were really, really, really important. I mean, there were a few times that Forest were able to get in behind, even though we were kind of playing a back 4, back 5 setup at different moments, and he was there to clear the ball. I think Tosin was also big in that regard. So huge growth from him. He's going to need to take another step next year in Champions League to deal with some of the incredible talent that is going to be in that competition. And there's going to be some new challenges thrown at him next year. I think there's going to be a little bit more expectation on him as a leader of the team. But man, huge performance from him. Very pleased.
Well, and think about just maybe performances and how this kind of lived on the balance, Brandon. 10 shots for Forest, 6 shots for Chelsea. Both teams, though, only with 2 shots on target. And the XG for both teams, well below, I think, where they've lived most of the season. 1.35 to Forest, 1.07 to the good guys. Also heading into the Champions League. I don't know if you know about them, Chelsea Football Club. You may have heard about them. It definitely feels as if this was one of those games, though, where Chelsea was able to take advantage of the chances that fell to them versus not being able to get it across the line.
Well, it was a super conservative match. I mean, the first half, nobody was willing to stretch and push in transition, really, just because of how much was riding on the line. When you kicked off at the beginning of the day, both teams had to win to get in. I don't think any of us were predicting that Everton were going to beat Newcastle except Dan, but even United and Villa, like everything, like in City beating Fulham, comfortably, like all the things broke the right way as the day went on. But you had to start with that. And so we didn't really give anything, but we didn't really create anything. I think the announcers talking about how no shots on target until I think early in the second half. But this is just one of those ones that you just play not to lose. You stay in it, give yourself time, see how it's going, and then find your chances. And thankfully we did, because obviously just with the attack that we had today, Neto not really offering anything up front by himself, but I think that's probably understandable. Madueke struggling to find some time to get in. Jadon Sancho, same thing. So you're back to kind of Cole and Enzo trying to make something happen from I guess positions that are less than ideal. So look,
you mean left back? You mean
yeah. When Cole gets turned away from pressure and the only pass option he has is Robert Sanchez, not ideal.
You don't like that pass pattern?
It's they had a lot going on today. They couldn't lose, and I guess to be fair, we kept that in front of us, and obviously the defensive unit was big today. So yeah.
I think you're kind of wanting to touch on that, though. Just maybe the deployment of Cole across the game here. I think you felt like that was not the ideal position for him, even though it did really make it so that not a whole lot was happening down that side necessarily. Everything seemed to be coming from the opposite flank. So Maresca being very pragmatic rather in his distribution for this game. Not the sexiest football we've seen this season, but it was the get her done type of football that we were looking for in this moment.
Yeah, I think first half was a little like just test the waters. Let's make sure that we don't lose it in the first half. And I think that meant that there was a lot of like weird deployments going on. There was wing back play all over the place. Enzo was really far up the pitch, but obviously I think it's struggling with his eye and couldn't really string a whole lot together. Then Cole basically then has to cover off when Marc Cucurella decides to go on an adventure like he's prone to do. So this is all just a really important growth thing. I like Cole as the false nine. I think that really looked a lot better, especially when he's able to control the ball and spray passes and stuff like that. I want him closer to goal. I think you have other players. Malo Gusto comes in the second half, plays an effective wingback role for a lot of second half. Like there's players who can do that job who don't have Cole's talent for scoring goals. So let's get that man closer to the frame of the goal and see if we can score a little bit more, because the offensive output recently has been pretty anemic, and we need to get back to free scoring ways.
Yeah, Peterson in YouTube just asking the question, Sam, where are the pundits that wrote us off? And it's shame in capital letters for those who just forgot that Chelsea were here. Chelsea can get the job done, unlike some teams that just really could not get it over the line today.
I would probably point to myself also, because I was very critical of Enzo Maresca early on in the season. So I will hold my hands up and say, absolute apologies to him as well as the squad. There is a lot to improve on, definitely, but it's a young squad. We all know that the squad building has been a little bit suboptimal. There are still more than 2 positions where we can strengthen and basically mount a proper challenge next season. But with the resources that he's been given, provided there was a spell where, Palmer wasn't scoring the way that he had under Poch. We didn't have a single centre forward because both our guys were injured and suspended. So not having those resources and to be able to grind out the results that we did in that run, and to turn the tide, especially after the kind of 2025 we've had, didn't have a single point against a top 8 opponent for the longest time, and then you go and essentially win against Nottingham Forest, and that too against a very, very well-organized, stubborn unit. So again, it's just showing a lot of character. I think it also bodes very well for a tight UECL final for us. So yeah, I think those 2 things I can look at and say, yeah, a lot of people did have us as being outside favorites for the Champions League, but really glad that everybody's turned it around. So yeah, now just look to the next 14 days, plan well for the Club World Cup, and make it happen.
A good reminder if you're going to the Club World Cup, we will have some events in Atlanta and then also Philadelphia if you're interested in that. And maybe a little get together in New York City on the weekend before the Club World Cup kicks off. You can find more information on our socials about that, and we'll put them in the show notes too. But I think maybe just pulling back, the Premier League season is over. It's done. We finished 4th place. It's absolutely phenomenal. What are we thinking in terms of maybe just, some of the performances or kind of evolutions of players that you've seen this season in terms of who have you really enjoyed watching and maybe who you think is kind of like heading in the right direction? I mean, I think one, obviously he's getting a lot of interest, from the Real Madrid think they can come in and buy him. I mean, you have Enzo Fernandez, who obviously was struggling with a little bit of an injury kind of situation here over the last couple of games, but I mean, he finishes with in the league 6 goals, 7 assists, best in both categories in a full season as in any of his kind of senior campaigns. So 13 total goals and assists. I mean, Brandon, to me, like that's one that I point to. Are there other individuals that you've been really impressed by this season that you feel gives Chelsea an advantage heading into the final, but then also the Club World Cup too?
What I find the most frustrating is the goalkeeping situation, right? And so why I say it that way.
Why'd you have to go about frustrating? Come on, this is a
my
happy
dilemma.
day.
My dilemma is that Sanchez led the league in save percentage, only conceded one more than David Raya, and yet, like, I think most of us still are like, nah, he's not the guy. But like, if it minus a wobbly in the middle kind of part, like if you look back reflectively, you have to say on paper, not passing the eye test, but like getting the results done. Like we didn't have to worry about him too much in the end, like when we really needed him. But that's still one I think I'm really struggling with to try to come to grasp with. But I think a lot of people could look at that position and be like, actually, compared to 3-4 months ago, we're in a much better spot, but that's where he gets his credit. By the way, he also had 1 goal creating action, and special shout out to Kepa, who had 1 shot on goal this season. So
I'm glad that you found a way to turn that frown upside down. Really appreciate that one there. Nick, who's maybe one of those people? I know we talked a little bit about Levi, so I think he's gotten some flowers here. Other players that you're thinking about that heading into the cup final, heading into the Club World Cup, and even next season, that you just on the back of what they did in a 38 game Premier League season, you feel so much more certain about their spot in the squad.
Cucurella. I think we got to give Cucurella some massive props. Iron Man this year played basically every game. We don't really have a left backup. And I think like the amount of pressure and ownership and goal scoring and assisting and running and shithousing and everything that he did for this team. I know we said it a week and a half ago, but like the 0 to hero narrative that this guy has gone under at Chelsea is something really extraordinary. And I would say like last year he was good. This year he was great. Like for him not to be in like more team of the seasons is just insane to me. I think he's been fantastic. And yeah, he scores the winner against Manchester United that gives us a chance to be in this position to get into Champions League. He scored important goals when we haven't had anyone scoring goals this season from left back when he's supposed to be tucking into midfield. He's all the way up at goal. Like just insane effort. And I'm super proud that he's on our team. And I think he's ready for the challenge next year.
And it jumps up 1,100 extra minutes this season in terms of like this season over season in the league with Chelsea. He was at 1,782 last season. He'll finish just shy of 3,000 minutes in the Premier League campaign this year. But that's also with 5 goals and 1 assist, which is absolutely crazy in the league when you consider it. Moises Caicedo was the one who will end up being the Iron Man individual, though. Nick and Sam, we've spoken about him ad nauseum, the Chelsea player of the season, but just how good is Moises Caicedo? How excited are you for what he's going to continue to do in his evolution next year? Maybe with someone like Andre Santos in the midfield as well. It does feel as if he's primed for even another step up next year.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think he's in terms of the archetype of a midfield commander, a midfield general. somebody who can hold a midfield on his own. He's been sensational, and that is probably doing it by himself, where he had no depth whatsoever. Nobody, in terms of reinforcements or cavalry, in terms of coming off the bench and giving him a little bit of a respite. He just had to play 90 minutes over and over again, day after day, go to South America, play for Ecuador, come back, play again. So it's just been that kind of a season from him. And last season obviously came in a little late, could not have a preseason, had a little bit of a rusty start, and essentially took some time to get into his rhythm, but just incredible from him from a personal perspective. Also, the leadership qualities. We've been crying out for it, saying who's going to come and take charge of it, lead by example. Almost an Aspilicueta kind of player where he's probably very soft spoken, but when he steps out on the pitch, he shows it to everybody around in terms of what effort means. So, in terms of a incredible player, in terms of a fantastic dressing room personality, just the ideal personality there. And I think it's a bargain that you paid only 100 million for him, in my opinion.
A lot of praise. I'm loving this. This is a type of result where Chelsea got the business done themselves, didn't have to rely on other people to make the magic happen. I guess as you're thinking about this one, Nick, just maybe heading into the cup final, more confidence now that Chelsea are going to get it done against Real Betis after the string of performances that they put in?
Yeah, I mean, I still think it's going to be a challenge. Like, this is obviously a different animal than Nottingham Forest is altogether, Manchester United, or any of our other recent kind of opposition. But I think today is going to do wonders for this team and their confidence heading into the final. I would anticipate there's going to be some rotation. I think that rotation will be well earned. Like you saw Noni Madueke on his ass at the end of this game from running around so much. I think there are a lot of players who probably on a short turn are going to feel the burn from a game like this. But it's going to be incredibly important that the backups that come in to the starting lineup, we already know Philip Jorgensen's going to play in the final, per Enzo Maresca's comments. It's going to be incredibly important that these guys attain the level that this starting 11 did today, and really not only play well, but play controlled. I think the thing that I've really loved about the last two performances, especially in the second halves of the last two performances, we did not panic. There was no panic in this team. Everyone knew their job, was very committed. We were saying in the group text during the game, very committed performance, everyone doing their job. That sort of thing wins, right? So if it is squeaky, if we are up 1-0 in the cup final and it is the 80th minute, I want to see that level of commitment. I want to see Reece James barking out orders. I want to see Tosin making huge headers. I want to see Levi challenging. I want to see Marc Cucurella making key passes upfield to break pressure. All that sort of stuff is what I'm looking for on Wednesday. And so we'll see. We'll see what happens, but very, very pleased.
And then, Brandon, when you think about that, again, amazing to have a season top 4 finish into the Champions League again, an opportunity to win silverware to complete the new set of European trophies to be the first club to do it, which again is just how Chelsea like to do things. Anyone you're looking at who maybe didn't feature today or didn't start necessarily that you think is going to get the nod or an opportunity heading into that match?
Well, I mean, I think that's interesting. Let's see how Reece is feeling, right? Like if he's going to stay fresh, or if maybe Malo jumps in. But I mean, Tyreek George seems to have been given a lot of confidence in that competition, and it's not like you had to play 3 wingers again today. So you imagine somebody you at least rest, and he's probably the quickest one. Trebo, obviously, think could jump right in. But when it comes back to like a defensive unit, you kind of ride your hot hand. And if you've had this back line for the last couple of matches, 2-3 matches, even if you're going to switch out the goalkeeper, which isn't an easy decision for Enzo Maresca to switch for a final. So, I mean, at least credit for making a bold decision there. Maybe keep the back line in front of him as same as you can, just so there's that familiarity in front of him. But those are probably my two most likely shout outs.
Sam, is there a one at the very, very tippity top of the formation that you think Enzo Maresca is going to make heading into the final?
Well, I mean, Nico Jackson coming in, just making sure that he's well rested, looking for his redemption arc after what he did against Newcastle. So I'm I'm hoping he's fired up for this because he knows better than anybody that if he doesn't do it, then there's a big money striker signing coming in and taking his place. So just a one game, 90-minute audition where an excellent performance could essentially change his fortune. So I think he'll be fired up. Like Brandon said, Tyreek George has had like a really, really good UECL campaign. So maybe you get to see him. Sancho did again. I was expecting him to be fired up, knowing that he could very well go back to a United side where everything is doom and gloom, but didn't just look like he was inspired to do anything there. So yeah, left wing open for an addition, center forward open for an addition. Two major roles for me that need to be filled. So up to those two guys. I'm sure everybody else is stepping up for certain.
Nick, you were wincing visually. For those who are watching on YouTube in an audio form, it was quite the wince when Sancho's name was brought up a moment ago in terms of the doom and gloom, which I think is Sam putting it very lightly about what's happening at Old Trafford and for Manchester United. But it does feel as if it is a whimper and not a bang that Jadon Sancho is going out on here, and most likely puts Chelsea in a position where they would be better off just paying the fee and allowing Sancho to go back to really and truly upgrade that side of the attack.
Yeah, I'm there. I think the irony is that Mason Mount playing in the final got us 3.5 million pounds of the 5 million pounds that we need to pay United to take Sancho back. So
Sam,
really,
was that officially reported? I mean, I saw someone post that out there, but I also
Who cares?
no fact check.
Ride the wave. Sounds great.
Yeah, they owe us more money. Where?
And in any results, I do believe that he is not at the level we need to be successful. I don't know if it's a setup or if it's just him struggling with the pace of the Premier League. I think the thing that I was most excited for him this year was just his technical ability, his dribbling ability, his ability to get by people. We obviously listened to Sam's analysis early in the season when we signed him about what his positive attributes are going to be. I just don't think we saw enough of those positive attributes this year. I think we saw a guy who at times decided he was going to be a world beater and crushed a couple of shots from outside of the box and looked really good and dribbled and really looked on his game. And then most of the time we saw a guy who looked kind of apathetic and didn't command either flank. I mean, he was tried on the right, he was tried on the left, and it just didn't really pay off. So I would definitely that whole left wing, unless Madueke is the guy over there, the whole left wing is up for debate. I know we had on our Chelsea and South America special on Wednesday some talk of Rodrigo. Nico Williams is my guy for that wing if we can afford him, but there's a whole lot of interesting possibilities. I just don't think Jadon Sancho is one of them.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at his total contribution in the season in the Conference League, it was 1 goal and 5 assists, so 6 goal contributions there, 3 goals and 4 assists in the Premier League, a total of 7. So his total for the season, 13. That was his best senior season since the 22-23 Manchester United season. So a little bit of a return to form there in terms of what he was able to offer. But you wonder if, for 20-25 million, you might be able to get somebody even better in that position. Sam, we're going to have to do a ton of scouting podcasts in very short order because of the exceptional window that FIFA is allowing teams to use to sign and register new players for the Club World Cup. First and foremost, thoughts and prayers, my man. Thoughts and prayers. Really sorry for you and all the video you're going to be watching. Secondarily, though, as you think about that left wing, who are you looking at maybe as just like a group? You don't have to talk about why, because we're going to save that for the podcast we do on it in the episode. But are there 3 or 4 names that you just want people to start watching some highlight reels on and thinking about as it relates to upgrading our wing play?
Yeah, I mean, I've been ahead of the curve this time, Dan. So I've already watched like 20 games of Giovanni Kinda. I've already done like my Andre Santos at Strasbourg research. I've done my Estevao and also done my Sugo stuff. So everything is out of the way, making sure that we've got some nice newsletters and scouting reports lined up before the Club World Cup starts. But left winger is, I think, the biggest headache for us this season. I think center forward, you've got a plethora of options, experienced, young, low budget, the premium targets that you can go after in terms of Viktor Gyökeres, for example. But left wing is one where there are just a handful of good targets, but not one that I would say is an exceptional standout in my opinion. Like the season before, we had Bradley Barcola, even had Desiree Doué, who was showing some really good things on the wing, and probably those two guys, young, being able to offer something that we didn't have, also supremely hardworking. You could say that, yeah, this is what you can do. But in terms of what Maresca wants in and out of possession, it could be very difficult for us to go out and say, yeah, this is the one. Even the ones that are out there, Alejandro Garnacho, a poison chalice, all the noise around him is, I really like the player, but everything around him is a big no-no. And we know that the moment the sporting directors think there's an attitude issue, they tend to slowly back off. That's why we didn't go with John Duran. So yeah, a couple of guys. I mean, I would probably look at Malik Fofana at Lyon as somebody who's definitely one that is worth watching. He's been quite good. He's very good against United in the Europa League. So was really explosive to watch. Really good things from him. But again, quite raw, quite young. Not a guy who will come in and give you 15 goals and assists immediately. So probably one definitely. I have a feeling something with Rafael Leao could happen. I'm not a big fan of his defensive work, but in terms of a prodigious attacking talent, he's the right age, could probably move at the right time. So maybe one to watch there. And that's about it. Bino Gittins has been mentioned by Ben and Matt. I like him, not really huge on him, but yeah, I think those three names are guys that look like the more obvious candidates. But who knows? Maybe a mystery name like Jeremiah Hernandez pops up, and everybody loses their minds. But I would say it's probably very, very difficult for us to get a premium left option. The good thing is Estevao scored 2 goals in his last game on the left wing. So, if you want to move Noni on the right hand side, move Neto on the right hand side. Maybe that's a position that opens up with Ty. But let's see how that goes. But that's probably my call. That it's tough.
And the big and important thing here is that with Chelsea being back in the Champions League, with the extra money coming in across broadcast, sponsorship, kit, you're going to see the caliber of players that Chelsea can go after take a step up versus what we would potentially have been able to get if we were in the Europa League, or if we had been back in the, heaven forbid, the Conference League final or Conference League again. The stat from Squawka was that the average starting age for our Premier League season, 24 years, 36 days. It's the youngest ever by a team in a single campaign in the Premier League. And I know there were points in the season, Nick, where it was a tough watch. There were points where we were, I think, frustrated about maybe the drop off from, mid-December through essentially like March, where Chelsea just were really struggling to grind it out. And I feel as if we're heading now into a summer, we're heading now into next season, where because of the adversity that this team faced, because again, they'll be, half a year older by the time they kick a Premier League football again, this team is on the precipice of being something potentially really special if you get those summer signings right. If you add a couple of seasoned heads to this team and this organization, maybe the framework that we've been looking at is actually going to produce the right level of success that we are expecting next season.
Yeah, I mean, it's super fine margins, right? We squeaked in to the Champions League this year after some very poor gambles by our sporting directors last summer. I think when we did our transfer window analysis in February, these last 2 windows were among the worst windows that we've ever had. So they really took a huge, huge gamble. We'll have to see. I think a large part of just to answer Matt's comment here, a large part of my problem with the team is the way that it was constructed this year. I think that when you have a young manager who's never managed in the Premier League before or at any European competition, and you combine that with an incredibly young staff of players, it can leave you in a difficult spot. I would argue that the youngest players, a lot of them overachieved what I thought their level would be this year. Some of the more experienced players, I think didn't have the greatest performances and were loaned out and all this sort of stuff. So I really do hope that the sporting directors get the mix right this year. And that there is a little bit, I'm not saying we have to go find a 35-year-old Thiago Silva to have experience. I don't think that anyone's saying that, but I do hope that they go find a 25, 26-year-old who still is within the structure of what they're trying to do and can provide some much needed experience in difficult moments, because I do think the team managed their way out of it at the end. But I think in the Champions League, that's a whole other ballgame. that we're going to need to play and play effectively. So gamble paid off on fine margins. We obviously don't want to have that happen every year and have our collective blood pressure go up as much as it did this year. So combination of the young players getting more experience and providing some extra experience for a team that I think needs it to play in an advanced competition is going to be the key.
Well, and if this team, if a lot of these players potentially have the opportunity to win first major silverware as a senior footballer with Chelsea, that stands for something too. Like that's going to be really big and transformative in their experience, the hunger and the desire for more next season, the ability to will themselves to it. I mean, potentially if you go very far in this Club World Cup, and I know there's plenty of jokes to be made about what I'm sure is going to be very underwhelming ticket sales and some semi-empty stadiums for some of these matches here in the US, just based upon what you see on Ticketmaster or StubHub for the games. But again, if you could win 2 competitions back to back over the span of 2 months, there could be something really special for this team, really transformative again. I mean, Sam, as you think about that, and that Nico Jackson is going to essentially feels like be playing for his Chelsea career on Wednesday in the final, how are you feeling about the names you're seeing linked with Chelsea for a striker? Because you imagine if it's not going to be Nico Jackson, that they will have upgraded that position by the time they have touchdown in the US.
I think the pool is good. There's a lot of guys that I've watched extensively, and it's a very diverse pool, and that's what is interesting because there is a big margin to get it horribly wrong. You might recruit a center forward who's not really attuned to your style of play. Could be just a guy who's happy running into Bundesliga spaces and essentially running in behind defenses, and the way Maresca plays, you might not find those spaces in the Premier League. So I do like Liam Delap. A lot of crowing about how he played for Ipswich and all of that, but in terms of raw fundamentals, in terms of what you're looking at from your center forward at his age, at his release clause, I would be absolutely willing to give him a try because the manager knows him, the scouting setup knows him, Joe Shields obviously knows him well,
Cole
but
Palmer knows him
those
well.
mental factors in terms of Cole Palmer knows him well. In terms of just how well you know the guy, what motivates him as an individual is extremely important. Lavia, Tosin, all of these are City guys. So you do have like a core that is quite familiar, has played as youngsters with each other. So, but yeah, I think it's like Tosin obviously is a senior citizen by now, but everybody has that, sort of know-how in terms of knowing each other. But all these young guys, Liam Delap really stands out for me. I do have a soft spot for a lot of other guys in the pool. Sheshko is somebody that I've watched very closely. Arsenal are after him. But yeah, it does look like in terms of what we need, my number one choice would have probably been Victor Osimhen, just going by what we require and what we're missing. But the wage package is 250. The fee is going to be 80 million. Just doesn't make sense to me. You have 3 or 4 major signings that you need to make. Like Nick mentioned, left back depth has to be number one. Left wing has to be number one. If you send Sancho back, you've got a center forward to essentially make right. If what is Wes's situation? Do you need a right center back? All those are like major questions in my eyes. So probably go for Delap. See if you want to keep Nico Jackson for a 3rd season. At this point, I think the fan base will be quite split in terms of what you want to do with him. I would keep him, but Delap does look like somebody you could take a very intuitive gamble on. But experience-wise, those big guys might be out of our reach, wage-wise and transfer fee-wise. So,
Sam, I got to disagree with you a little bit here. Like, I think Victor Osimhen or a player of his experience and production is what we need. Like, we're in the Champions League now. This is big boy football. Goal conversion, shot conversion has to be the number one priority heading into next year. I think you can make an argument that what you've seen from the midfield and the defense at the end of the season is good enough to get you a long part of the way that you need to get to. Obviously, some reinforcements at left back and such, but your left wing and your striker are incredibly crucial to this team being at a certain level next year. I want someone who can come in and get us as close to 20 goals as humanly possible. Otherwise, we won't have a shot. And I don't think Liam Delap is that guy. I think that Nico is a better striker than Liam Delap. And so I think if you're looking for a true upgrade, someone like Victor Osimhen or someone of that production level has to be your priority. And if it's not, then you have to go spread what is essentially like 35 goals minimum across 2 players. So you need someone who can get at least 17, maybe a left winger like Rodrigo, who can maybe overproduce their tally for this year and get close to 17 to get you anywhere close. So I think the math dictates that you have to go after someone big. And I worry that at Delap that pressure is going to be a lot.
No, I
I mean,
absolutely agree with you, Nick. I do think that we need to get a striker of the caliber. I'm just saying the wage bracket that we have, 250K, his wage is essentially what Reece James is on. So and plus you add the transfer
worth
fee.
it.
So I don't know if the SDs make that move. Yeah, I mean, for me it is worth it. For me, I'm looking at everything that Maresca is doing. You want a center forward who gets you 4 shots a game, no matter what he does. He crashes the far post. He broke his cheekbone and had to get metal plates there because he crashed into Milan Skriniar. That's the kind of center forward you need. The guy who throws his body around, the guy who he will break a bone to get to that ball. That's not what Nico Jackson is, as much as I like him. So if you want a pure blooded, blood sniffing center forward, then that's him. It's just the same with Rodrigo. I look at his wage, I look at the fee it'll take, and I do think that's a big question mark for me. But
oh,
I would definitely love to see it. So let's see.
yeah, the Rodrigo one would be very exciting. I think that one is, again, just back to being Brazil FC in the Premier League would not be a problem that I would have in any way, shape, or form. One of the YouTube comments talking about how we should just bring in Chris Wood for big man Giroud energy if you wanted.
No, but can you imagine, Dan? Like you make the Champions League, and suddenly there's like this huge samba party with like Rodrigo, Estevao, and Andre Santos coming in, like absolute carnival, absolute scenes there.
When
The
we
2
win the
resident
3rd
Brazilians
Champions
being
League,
super happy.
not a problem. I will ride that every single day. Not a problem. The Chris Wood one, I think it's a funny shout, but again, he had 20 goals in the Premier League this season, 4th overall. I mean, you think about it. Salah with 28, Isak with 23, Holland with 21, Chris Wood with 20, and then Wissa tied with Mbeumo, both at 19 apiece. Like, there are not many 20 plus goal strikers available out there. And so even of these players that we're talking about, I think it is kind of potentially like a push to say, like, are they going to get 20 goals in the Premier League next season? I don't know. But I think that they need to have kind of combined goals, assists across all competitions, considering Chelsea will be in the Premier League, in the Champions League, in the League Cup, in the FA Cup. Like, I want to see deep runs across the entirety of next season. You have to be getting, I think a significant number across all 4 competitions. But I'm not necessarily thinking that they're going to have to be a 20 goal a season in the Premier League, depending upon like the targeted profile we're going after.
It's not just the Premier League. I think the Premier League is the marker that we all know. Like, you get a 20 goal striker and you're going to do very well in the Premier League. Like, there's no doubt. But I think for me, someone with Champions League experience, wink, would be very, very needed because there is not a whole lot of Champions League experience in our team, right? We have a few guys from the last vestiges of the last time that we played in this, but not everybody, right? Reece James, obviously a huge amount of experience. Enzo Fernandez, a little bit of experience, so on. But to actually go and like play deep in that competition, there's not a ton of that here. And so that for me is going to be a huge priority. Like, how do we get some folks up front who are clinical finishers, number one, have a big game experience, even if it's not like perfect, like for like Champions League match day experience, and can help drive this team forward, because the test now is that we're playing a lot of football next season, right? We have the Club World Cup coming up in 3 weeks. We have a final on Wednesday. There's going to be less than a month break before these guys are back and we're playing in the Premier League again. And then the Champions League starts. So we need bodies, and we need bodies who know how to play and win, especially until this team is like fully fit and together, which is probably not until October. Like, if we're being honest with the way the schedule is going to work out. So yeah, it's not just like, hey, what do we need, but how do we survive what's going to be a really difficult start to the season.
And
Yeah,
Nick,
plain to
just
consider.
Yes, sorry, Dan. Just to add, like Nick, of the top 5 teams, we are the guys with the fewest amount of league goals this season. We are 13 short of our tally last season, and I'm also looking at Kukureya's 5 in there as like a God-given gift, especially
Hmm.
the fact that he scored 2 winners in 1-0 games against United and Leicester. So those 6 points could have made all the difference. Those 5 goals again in a different season, will he be able to re-emulate his season best? I don't know. So even if you give him 2 or 3 goals, that's another 15 goals you have to make. You're still 25 goals away from Liverpool. So bridging that gap in terms of trying to figure out where the rest of the goals are going to come from in this system is, I think, a big headache. So when you do look at the caliber, you need to be able to get those off the bench as well. So when you talk about quality in terms of center forward, in terms of left winger, does Rodrigo have a career record of getting to 15 goals and assists multiple times? Yes. Does Osimhen have 15 goals multiple seasons? Yes. So those are the guys that you should be targeting. This is the season where you look at Liverpool's Allison and Van Dijk signings and say those are the game changers you need to go from youngest side with some competitive pedigree to title challenging, title winning team. So I think that's maybe where the twist comes, and up to the sporting directors from here on.
Look, we have Forest fans in the chat, like Phrase03, just come in and saying congrats on getting into
Huge
the
credit.
Champions League again. Congrats to you guys for a phenomenal season as well. I mean, they obviously, very much not where I think many people would have participated, predicted Forest to be at the end of the season. And what a season it was for Chelsea Football Club in the Premier League. But again, job not complete yet. Match in the midweek. We'll be back after that one to record, hopefully, about Chelsea's newest European trophy. We'll be back also with tons of additional content on the transfer business as well. I don't know, maybe Matt Law Nostradamus at one point will have to come on, Ben Jacobs and others, and then also plenty of scouting stuff, as well as we are going to save the majority of our end of season recap content until after the Club World Cup, because it just feels as if that kind of gets bucketed into the current season, because you win that, you're going to get to spend even more heading into the summer. So thank you so much for joining us on Championship Sunday in the Premier League. It feels really, really good to be done with another Premier League season with you all. Thank you so much for listening, watching, streaming with us, and chatting with us. But until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.